Are you ready to stop working 50, 60, 70-hour weeks feeling like you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off? Did you know that you could empower your team without taking any of your time in order to do it? You'll know who to fire, who actually needs the training, so that way they can be empowered and take things off your plate so you don't have to work those long, long weeks or get interrupted every second because they need you. Don't worry, we have a solution and it's free. Go to eventualmillionaire.com/team toolbox. It is our team toolbox. That's about 15 minutes worth of videos. That's it. And it will let you know who to fire, who needs training, exactly how to get your team to stop bugging you for every little thing that needs to come up. And that way you can rest easier and really be the captain of the ship for your business. So again, it's eventualmillionaire.com/team toolbox. Have an amazing day.
Potent advice and inspiration from real self-made millionaires. Welcome to The Eventual Millionaire with your host, Jaime Masters.
Welcome to Eventual Millionaire. I'm Jaime Masters, and I am so thankful to have my good friend Bob Burg back on the show. He has a brand new book called The Go-Giver Influencer. You can check it out at thegogiver.com. Thanks so much for coming back on the show.
My pleasure. Much too long since we've spoken. I think it was at a convention a couple of years ago when we last saw each other, and it's always great to see you and speak with you.
Seriously, I feel like we're friends even though we never actually chat. I think that's
I know.
the problem with the internet nowadays. And go ahead.
No, I was going to say we follow each other on social media, so we always know what each other's up to. So we always, we feel like we are connected, right, and so forth. So it's really funny.
Well, and that leads me exactly to the influencer question, because what do you determine an influencer? I get called an influencer all the time, and I'm like, well, what does that mean? It just means people follow you and feel connected to you, like I do with you. How does that work?
Well, you are an influencer, and when you think about it, influence itself is simply, I guess it's a noun and a verb, right? I mean, to influence, and we can just define it very simply, it's the ability to move a person or persons to a desired action, usually within the context of a specific goal. Someone who is an influencer is someone who can do that and who does that. But it's really not so much, and that's why when we say the definition, sure, but that's not the essence of influence. The essence of influence is pull. Pull as opposed to push, as in the old question, how far can you push a rope? And we know the answer is not very far, at least not very fast or very effectively, which is why great influencers don't push. You never hear people say, wow, that Tom or that Susan, she is so influential. She has a lot of push with people. No, she's influential. She has a lot of pull with people. Because that's what influence is. It's pull. It's an attraction. Great influencers attract people first to themselves and only then to their ideas. People who see you as an influencer, which again you're a big influencer, they see you through who you are, okay? More than just what you do. What you do is important, but who you are is the big thing. And that's where character comes into play. People know you, they like you, they trust you. And that's what allows you to influence. And I think one of the biggest character traits, if you will, although it's also a skill set of an influencer, is understanding that great influence is never about the influencer. It's about those we want to influence, means it's about them. So Dale Carnegie in his classic, How to Win Friends and Influence People, what I believe his underlying premise of his entire book was stated in one sentence. And this is where he said, ultimately, people do things for their reasons, not our reasons. So the great influencer is constantly asking themselves questions such as, how does what I'm asking this person to do, how does it align with their goals, with their wants, with their needs, with their desires? How does what I'm asking this person to do, how does it align with their values? What are they receiving from it? What problem am I helping them to solve? And when we ask ourselves these questions thoughtfully and intelligently, genuinely, authentically, not as a way to manipulate another human being into doing our will, but as a way of building everyone in the process, now we've come a lot closer to earning that person's commitment. And that's influence.
Ooh, that was perfect. So tell me a little bit more about if you think that's innate or if it's a skill set. Because when you want to sell something, let's say you're an influencer, you're like, oh, I need to get these people over here, right? But is it something where you just embody the goal of what they want and therefore it matches perfectly? Or do we have to work at this?
Well, I think whether it's innate or learned is sort of like anything else. It's probably a little bit of both. And some people are more geared toward that by nature, okay? But just like an athlete who may have great gross motor control and great small motor control and a natural ability to, hey, if they don't practice, they're only going to get so good, right? You know what I'm saying? They've had some natural talent, some great talent, but without really working at it. Well, it's the same with someone with influence. There are people who I think just by their very nature, they have an inclination to be able to do that. But unless you really learn and understand what it's about, it's very difficult to be at the top of your game. Now, there are people who maybe have very little innate ability to do that, but if they learn and study how to do it, they're going to be very, very good. And fortunately, for something like influence, it can be easily learned. It begins almost with a basic premise that the greatest influencers are, again, those who move from an I or me focus to an other focus. So you look at when you say sales, and sales is absolutely influence, right? What does a salesperson do? Well, they discover what the other person is looking to accomplish. Mm. And only when they know that are they able to match the benefits of their product or service with that person's best interests.
Definitely. And that was a skill set I learned because I used to hate sales so badly. I thought everyone is a used car salesman. But the only reason why used car salesmen suck, this is what I say, is because they try and match you with something that you don't want. That's not cool.
Well, sure. And when it comes to sales itself, and you hear a lot of people who've never been in professional selling, let's say, but everyone sells. I mean, Dan Pink wrote a great book about that. So when people say, oh, well, I could never sell, I hate sales. I don't think it's that they hate sales. They hate what they think selling is.
Yeah.
See, if you think that selling is something you do to someone as opposed to for someone, and you're a good person, well, you're not going to like the idea of doing that. If you think selling is about trying to convince someone to buy something they don't want or need, which, by the way, isn't selling. That's called being a thief or a con artist. But if you think that's selling, well, sure, you're going to hate the idea of what selling is.
Definitely. Please preach, right? Because I think people assume that they're congruent and those are totally not congruent. So how do we get better? And because most people aren't writing on their calendar, be a better influencer, right? So how do we actually improve that skill set on purpose?
Sure. Well, John David Mann, my awesome co-author of the entire Go Giver series, in this book, we outline 5 what we call secrets of genuine influence. But, when you say secrets, you got to put air quotes around them because there's nothing secret about them. I mean, these are like all our books, the principles have been there forever, right? It's just we put them into a story form is pretty much it. But it begins with number 1, which is master your emotions. And it's funny because while influence is all about the other person, okay, it begins with ourselves. We have got to control our own emotion. This is where it all begins because it's only when you're in control of yourself, when you're in control of your emotions, that you're even in a position to take a potentially negative situation or person and turn it into a win for everyone involved. Now, we all intuitively know this. It's certainly more the person who's able to control themselves and control their emotions is certainly in a much more influential position than someone who's not. Yet, how often do we kind of slip up and based on what someone says or does that pushes our emotional hot buttons, we allow ourselves to become frustrated or impatient or helpless or angry, and we say or do something that is very counterproductive to getting the results. It's the exact opposite, right? And so, well, why do we do this if we know better? And the reason is we're human beings. And as human beings, we're emotional creatures. It's how we're built. Now, we'd like to think we're logical, and to a certain extent, of course we are, but we're pretty emotionally driven, right? We make major decisions based on emotion. We back up those emotional decisions with logic, so we rationalize. And if you break up the word rationalize, it simply means we tell ourselves rational lies. And we do this to justify that decision we know we shouldn't have made, or that action we took or something we said or did that was hurtful as opposed to helpful. What we're not advising people to do is to deny their emotions or forego their emotions. First, it wouldn't be logical. It would be contrary to human nature. You couldn't do it for that long. But also, it's not even necessary. Emotions are a wonderful part of life. They bring us joy. They make life worthwhile. No, we're just saying that make sure you master your emotions rather than they mastering you. Or as one of my great friends, the leadership authority, Dondi Scumaci, I think you might know, as she says, take your emotions along for the ride, but make sure you are driving the car. In other words, you're at the wheel, okay? You're in control. You're logical. Your emotions are with you. That's fine, absolutely. But they're seatbelt fastened, right? They're in the passenger side where they can't do any harm. So I think that's really what it's about. When we can control our own emotions and help the other person to work effectively within theirs, now our influence is ready to go sky high.
Because everybody knows that they need to do it. It's way easier to say and way harder to do. Is it something where we need to seatbelt our emotions forever, or can you let them out when you're not in the negotiation or the recording videos or the back and forth? What do we do with that?
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah, and by all means. And remember, we don't want to deny our emotions.
Yeah.
Take them with us. Our emotions have wisdom to them. They just shouldn't be the main decision maker. One of the characters in the book, one of the mentors, describes it as let's say you're a business, and like any business, there's a board of directors, that's your emotions, and there's a CEO, that's the logic. A CEO should always consult with the board of directors. They have wisdom to share, but the ultimate decision needs to be the CEO. So yes, consult with your emotions. How do you feel about this? Absolutely. Down to it, it's your CEO brain that needs to be making the decisions if you want to create the environment where you're making the best decisions most of the time, right? Which don't guarantee the right results, but it certainly increases the odds. One way we can do this is to train our brain as opposed to react, right? And a great way to do it, let's say you have an issue, let's say with anger, okay, where someone at work or socially or family or friends, what have you, or when you're dealing with City Hall and the bureaucrats making it difficult, and you just know, and these things happen to you. Well, it's going to happen. Something like this is going to happen. So fortunately, you can prepare for it. It's when we're caught off guard that this usually, right, that happens. So in your mind, picture the usual interaction and how you kind of get mad or angry or frustrated, and maybe you say or do something, and how it feels afterwards. And it probably doesn't feel you probably feel kind of disappointed with yourself. Okay, now I want you to see that same situation, but now I want you to imagine yourself and picture yourself handling it beautifully. You're calm, you're serene, you let the person have their say, and you do so without interrupting. And then you have a calm and perfect response that diffuses the situation. Don't worry about the words right now, those come later, but I just want you to see it and then feel how good that feels afterwards. Then I want you to practice. Just like an astronaut, before going up on a mission in space, he or she will do hundreds of simulations, right? Why? Because when they get up into space, heaven forbid something happens with the equipment, well, they know what to do. They've been there. They've prepared for every, and you and I both study this, but people might say, well, it's not the same as being up. Well, you know what? It's close enough. Because the mind, the subconscious, can't distinguish between what has actually happened and what has been suggested to it over and over again. So what I want you to do is, after you've practiced, and be excited about the practicing, because you're going to really make some dramatic changes in your life. I did this myself years ago when I had to get over some real anger issues and had to become more effective. And I've taught hundreds of people how to do this, and the results are miraculous. And I didn't make this up. I mean, I was taught this by others, so I'm just sharing information that I learned. It's not that I'm anything special. I've never had an original thought in my life, but I'm good at learning from others' thoughts. And so the next time this happens, you're prepared, handle it beautifully, and then afterwards, I want you to take pleasure in that, and know two things. One is if you can do it right that time, theoretically, you can do it right every time. But secondly, you won't do it right every time, because you're a human being and we all mess up from time to time and we fall back into but that's okay, because we can continue to practice and continue to put it into play when these happen. And I'll just tell you something, again, just based on my personal experience and with the many I've taught this, within a few weeks, you'll become almost a changed person. You'll become so much more effective. You'll become so much calmer and in control of yourself. People will notice this about you, and you'll notice it about yourself, and your influence level will just be ready to explode.
See, it's so insane that we practice everything else, and yet we don't practice anything having to do with our emotions. Even in martial arts, we would have to practice over and over and over again for when something actually happened, your emotions would be crazy, and you had muscle memory, so that way you wouldn't freak out on the time that you were supposed to freak out, right?
Exactly.
But we don't practice this in business or in anything. So I implore everyone listening to do what Bob says. Like he said, it is miraculous. So tell us more about the rest of the steps, though, because that's something that we're going to be working on, the emotions, for a while, most likely. So keep following through. What's the rest of the steps?
Sure. So the next one, step number 2, is to step into the other person's shoes, which sounds trite. We've all heard it before. Step into the other person's shoes. And it sounds easy until you realize that most of us have different sized feet. So we can't step into their shoes, okay? Literally, figuratively, we can't step into their mind because we're not them. And we come from different belief systems, different ways of looking at the world, based on a number of things, such as upbringing, environment, schooling, and blah, 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 and so forth. But as human beings, we tend to think most of us see the world the same basic way. How could it be any different? So what happens is most conflict, if you will, is based on the fact that 2 or more people see the same basic thing from different viewpoints. Okay. And so in order to be able to step into their shoes, okay, we need to discover what's in those shoes. We do this through asking questions. And then we listen. But we don't just listen with our ears, as one of the mentor stories shared with protege. Don't just listen with your ears. That's the surface listening that most people do. That's the listening while you're waiting your turn to speak, and overwhelm them with your knowledge and wisdom and idea, right? I say this is the kind of listening that we're willing to let them get in their 2 cents so that we can then come back with our 10 cents, okay? And so instead, he said, listen with your eyes, listen with your posture, listen, he said, with the back of your neck. In other words, put your entire being into listening to this person. And when you do, 2 things will happen. One, you will have more information. You'll understand what is driving this person. You'll understand what's in their best interest and why they would make a certain decision. So you're equipped. Secondly, when you listen like this, the other person feels listened to. They feel heard. They feel understood. And it's a basic element of human nature to want to feel understood by another person. And they're much more likely to be open to your idea when they feel this way.
How do you do that on a one-to-many scale? So if you are an influencer, I'm really good with the one-on-one side. I love asking questions and actually listening. I learned the difference in that a long time ago. I was like, that is a very big difference. With children especially, very big difference, right? So how do we do that on a one-to-many scale, though?
This is when we continue to ask questions, but we understand that there's a little bit of a different dynamic. Mm-hmm. Now, if you are in front of an audience, you ask the audience questions. I remember seeing a politician, and this is when I was in college, and I was not a fan of this politician's policies by any way, but we can learn from everyone. And this person asked the audience questions and had us, raise our hands and had us, talk with each other, had us shout out answers. We really believed that he cared, okay, about us and what we thought. Now, just knowing this politician I don't believe for a minute, he really did, but that's just my own, belief system at work. Okay.
Yep.
But,
Love it.
but he made us feel like he actually cared what a bunch of kids thought. Okay. And he did this just by asking the audience questions. We can do this, of course, on social media by putting out questions on Facebook and on Twitter and in our blog and asking our audiences on our podcast what they would like to see. We can do surveys. There's all sorts of ways. And then when they respond, we need to be able to respond back, letting them know we heard them.
1,000,000 times over, yes. I love it. I'm so thankful for technology nowadays. We could never talk to that many people in that short of a time.
Technology provides us with the opportunity, I believe, to connect with more people first than we ever would have been able to without it. I think that's obvious. But it also allows us to drive the relationship deeper, quicker than we would be able to.
I love you saying that because, unfortunately, it also seems like people just become a number. Oh, now we have this many. Oh, we have this, right?
Right. If done that way, yes.
Yeah.
But great influencers don't look at it that way,
Yeah.
and
human. Yeah.
Exactly. And when people say, well, quality over quantity, but here's the thing. I don't think it's an either or. I think it's both, because numbers also are important. It's just not the most important. I think both quality and quantity are important. However, when you focus, gosh, I was hoping I wasn't going to do that. I was hoping to hold off on that.
I love it.
When you focus on the quality, okay? Focus on quality over quantity. And when you do, you will amass a greater quantity of quality. so it's is both. But yeah, you focus on the quality, but that's not to diminish, but because both are important.
I adore that. And I love that you sneeze, by the way, because you are human too. And I think we forget that there are people that are influencers and they are just human, right?
I'm sorry I sneezed on your podcast.
I love it. So let's go on to step number 3. So walk us through. What's number 3 then?
This is to set the proper frame or to reset an already set negative frame. What is a frame? Well, a frame is the foundation from which everything else evolves. When you set a proper frame, you're 90% of the way there to influencing. Let me give you an example, if I may, and I love sharing this story because it is my favorite frame story, and it has absolutely nothing to do with business. I was at a Dunkin' Donuts restaurant, and there was a little boy, a little toddler, probably 2.5 years old, who was running around the restaurant, and his parents called him back over to their table. So he starts to walk over, and as he does, he takes a spill on the floor. He slips and falls. Now, he didn't hurt himself, you could tell, but you could also tell he was shocked. He was surprised. This obviously hadn't happened to him before, and he didn't really know what to make of it. So what does he do? He looks over at his parents, the two people he trusts most in the world. He wants to get their interpretation of the event, right? What happened. He wants to know, okay, what happens next? Now, I truly believe that had his parents gotten panicky or upset or, oh no, my baby, are you? I think he would have started, well, I know he would have started to cry. But what they did, they just handled it so beautifully. They walked over hurriedly, but very calmly. They smiled and they laughed and they applauded and they said, oh, how fun. What a good trick. And immediately the little boy began to laugh. Now, what the parents did is they set a productive frame he could operate. We can do it with anyone we meet. It could be through our smile or the way we introduce ourselves or the way we welcome or what have you. The tricky part is, what about when someone else comes to the table with a negatively set frame? And we want to make sure we don't buy into that, but rather reset the frame. So let's take a sales situation, and you're about to do a presentation for a customer. Her name is Mary, and Mary seems kind of defensive. She lets you know right away she's not ready to buy anything now, or and she's not some easy sell. And who knows? She may have had a bad experience. Maybe she just woke up in a bad mood, or something happened. Who knows? So rather than buying into her confrontational frame or adversarial frame, let's kind of reframe it. We might start out the presentation by saying something like, Mary, while we've been able to help a lot of people with this product, whether or not it's the right answer for you, we simply can't know without exploring deeper and determining whether it meets your needs. So please know our conversation is for both of us to discover this. And if it does, great. If not, that's okay too. So we've now reframed this from adversarial to one of two allies who are simply looking for the same thing. What's best for her, the customer.
Yeah, you're not pushing something on her that she doesn't want, because she's just going to push back as much as you push.
Exactly. One of the mentors in the story, Judge Henshaw, she told her protege, Jackson, she said, in every conversation, a frame will be set. The only question is, who is going to set the frame?
I love putting it in that context, because I've done that with my kids, but you don't remember that sometimes when you sit down in business, that you're dealing with an adult. You don't,
right.
you still have the capacity to reset the frame, even though sometimes it doesn't feel like that.
Exactly.
That puts the power back in your shoes, which is extremely important, instead of letting them take you down the rabbit hole, right? All right. So what is number 4 and number 5? If we can do those kind of short, so that way they want the book, and that way they'll get it anyway, right?
Well, number 4 is to communicate with tact and empathy. My dad has always defined tact as the language of strength. I've always enjoyed, because to me, it takes a strong person to respond tactfully, to think first before they speak, to respond instead of react, to not just fire off an angry email or social media response, or to let someone push your buttons and keep you in that zone, right? So tact is really a way of communicating an idea to someone they may not necessarily enjoy, but doing so in such a way that not only are they not defensive toward you or resistant to your idea, but they're open to you and more accepting of your idea. That's what tact and empathy allows us to do. Now, number 5 is to let go of having to be right. Now, this can be confusing to people, and it can sound rather counterintuitive. Are you saying you don't care about being right? No, of course. About being right. You desire to be right. You prefer to be right. But what we're saying is you don't have an attachment to having to be right. In other words, you allow yourself to go into learner's mode. And this is key, because when we're too attached to having to be right or 100% right, that's when we fall victim to confirmation bias, which is exactly what it says. When you come across some information, if it confirms your already held beliefs or biases, you accept it. If it doesn't, you ignore it. These are the type of people, my mind's made up, don't confuse me with the facts. And the thing about these people is they can't grow. They can't learn. They can't know any more than they already do, which probably isn't as much as they think they know. We, on the other hand, when we let go of having to be right, we can learn more. We're much more equipped. But secondly, and the main benefit of doing this is that the other person, when they realize, which they quickly will, that they're dealing with someone who's not looking to be right at all costs, who's not looking to be right by making them wrong, who's not looking, to manipulate, or not looking to just, they're going to be much more amenable to your ideas. They're going to be much more accepting of you and your ideas, because the trust factor goes way up. And again, this makes you much more influential.
Awesome. So, and the book tells more about all of that, because I have 1,000 more questions that I want to ask you on those, but I know we have to start wrapping up. So everyone, make sure you go grab the book so you can ask and learn more from Bob, because this stuff is really so important that I don't think people understand that it will change the course of your life as a human, right? When we think of personal evolution as a human, not just a business owner, this will help as a business owner too, but who you are as a human, I think, is an amazing piece of it. So I'm going to ask you the last question, and I think everyone should go get the book first, but what's one action listeners can take this week to help move them forward towards their goal of $1 million?
Okay, so I'd say whatever it is that you have learned to do that is the next correct step, take that step. I mean, it simply comes down to that. And since I don't know who the person is necessarily who I'm talking to and exactly what it is they need to do, I'm hoping they have a coach like you that can direct them and guide them. That's what you've done for so many of us so well. But I'm hoping that what they'll do is they'll ask themselves, what was that thing that my coach and I discussed, or whomever? What is this next step I'm supposed to take that will get me closer to the million? And now take it.
Okay, I never have follow-up questions, but I totally have follow-up questions on that because you said the correct step. And I think a lot of people get stuck on what is correct and what is not correct, and they don't necessarily know. So what would you say to that? What if they're like, I don't know the next correct step?
Okay, then you've got to get it clarified. Because remember, like anything else, just when we talk about belief systems, okay, we talk about stepping into their shoes or what have you, it always comes down to belief systems, to our premises. What do we mean by X? Okay, so well, the next step I was supposed to take was to become more familiar with so and so. So, okay, well, what does that look like? How do I do that? What's the result of my doing that correctly? So clarify, clarify, clarify. Check your premises. Never assume you know what the other person means by what they say. Never assume they know what you mean by what you say, because you don't and they don't. So always clarify.
Clarification and clarity is an amazing feeling. So tell us where we can get the book. I know you have a link. You said there's a couple of free chapters. Tell us where we can find all that.
Yeah, if they go to The Go Giver, without the hyphen, thegogiver.com, pretty much everything's there on the site. But if they scroll down a few pages, they'll see the books, and it says read excerpts or chapters 1 and 2. Click on whichever one you'd like, The Go Giver, the original one, or the latest one, The Go Giver Influencer. Read a couple of chapters to see if it grips you. And if it does, you can always click through to any of your favorite online bookstores or your favorite bricks and mortar bookstore.
Amazing. Thanks so much for coming on the show today, Bob. We really, really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure, my friend. I just love speaking with you. I love the work you do.
Ditto. Same thing. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed that interview. And if you want to check out more amazing resources, I'm only curating the best of the best. Go check out eventualmillionaire.com. You can take the Eventual Millionaire quiz, figure out where you are in business and what you need right now. Plus, you can look at curated resources specifically for you on the new Start Here page. I'm so excited. Please join us. Please let me know if you need anything at all. I'm here for you. And have a fantastic day. Bye.